Well, today, Governor Tim Walz signed an executive order providing legal protection to those who come to Minnesota for gender-affirming health care. Jon Karl joins us now live from the Capitol with more about what prompted today's action. Hi, John.
Hey, Rena, this comes at a time when a lot of other states are passing bills that would restrict gender-affirming care or outlaw it for minors. And there's actually a bill here pending at the legislature here at the Capitol that would make Minnesota sort of a trans care refuge state. But the governor did not want to wait for that to get to his desk.
When our children tell us who they are, it is our job as grown-ups to listen and to believe them.
It was an event that had all the trappings of a bill signing ceremony. A huge crowd of lawmakers, advocates, and families, in this case, gathered in support of legal protections for people seeking gender-affirming care for themselves or their children. But the paper Governor Walz signed was an executive order. His action comes at a time when transgender persons across the nation feel under siege.
This is life-threatening.
We'll make sure that Minnesota's placed as a welcoming, loving, neighborly state where you are welcome and will be free of persecution or anything else that we're trying to see in some other states.
1 year later.
And finally, before you go, we commit to this race to kind of sticking to the facts. I mean, I heard Donald Trump give this speech in Montana he just gave, and he said that Tim Walz has signed a letter letting the state kidnap children to change their gender, that allowing pedophiles to claim, to be exempt from crimes. I mean, this is not true. It's not remotely true.
Well, what President Trump said, and I haven't watched the whole rally.
What he said was not true.
What President Trump said, John, is that Tim Walz has supported taking children from their parents if the parents don't consent to gender reassignment. That is crazy. And by the way, Tim Walz gets on his high horse about mind your own damn business. One way of minding your own damn business, John, is to not try to take my children away from me if I have different moral views than you.
He has not signed a law allowing the state to kidnap children to change their sexual identity.
What I just explained to you, I would describe as kidnapping, John. He has absolutely done this stuff. It's not crazy, John. Come on.
It's not what
you should not be able to take people's children away from them.
And that's not what he's proposed.
If you disagree with decisions about gender reassignment, yes, he has proposed that, John. He absolutely has. Now, here's the more important thing, John. Why are we talking about inflation?
Boy, oh boy, oh boy, oh boy, oh boy. We got to talk about another J.D. Vance interview with the mainstream liberal media, because this guy, again, unlike Kamala Harris, is not only not running from the mainstream liberal media, but he is welcoming them to take turns interviewing them back to back to back. And he is shutting them down back to back to back. Okay, the first video today was a video of J.D. Vance basically shutting down a CNN anchor who was pressing him on the accusations of stolen valor against Tim Walz. And the CNN anchor was essentially trying to defend Tim Walz's stolen valor, and J.D. Vance wasn't going for it, right? And in this video, as you guys saw at the beginning of the video, you have an ABC anchor, Jon Karl, who is doing the same thing that the CNN anchor was doing, which is defending Democrats, okay? Again, you're saying that these people are not acting as journalists. They're acting as an arm of the Democrat Party to defend them against attacks from Republicans. And Jon Karl is going to do this in this interview with J.D. Vance, where J.D. Vance is going to talk about Kamala Harris and her terrible border policies of the Biden administration, because she was, in fact, border czar, but the mainstream liberal media, although they are the ones that call Kamala Harris the border czar, they're going to insist that no, she was never border czar, trying to alleviate her of accountability and responsibility for the disaster that has been Biden's border policies, right, led by Kamala Harris. So without further ado, let's get into it.
One of the proposals that's in the platform, you've talked about it, Trump's talked about it, is a mass deportation. Now, I know he said, you'll start with the easy ones, the criminals, people commit crimes, deport them. But he said deporting 15 to 20 million people. How do you actually do that?
Well, John, we have to start with the fact that we have a wide open southern border because our border czar actually set a lot of open border policies. They suspended.
She's not actually. She wasn't the border czar.
Oh, that was what the media called her. She assumed the title. She had control over a lot of our border policy at a time when they were suspending. Let me finish, John. The time they were suspending deportations, they stopped Donald Trump's Remain in Mexico policy, and they reinstituted catch and release. They basically threw open the gates of our country, and now we have a ton of fentanyl, a ton of people suffering.
But how are you going to get 10 to 15 to 20 million people
Well,
out
the
of the
first
country?
thing you have to do is to stop the bleeding, stop the open border, get Kamala Harris out of there, and actually re-implement the Remain in Mexico policy, rebuild or finish Donald Trump's border wall, and you do that and you stop the bleeding. Now, you're right. Once you do that, once you stop Kamala Harris's open border policies, you've got to do something with the people who are already here. And I think that you take a sequential approach to it. You are going to have to deport some people. If you're not willing to deport a lot of people, you're not willing to have a border when there are 20 million illegal aliens in our country.
10 to 15 million people, this is like, I mean...
Well, John, I think that's the wrong attitude to take of it. Okay,
so you go knock on doors and ask people for their papers.
Again, but let me finish. I think this is the wrong attitude towards it, right? There's 20 million people here illegally. You start with what's achievable. You do that. And then you go on to what's achievable from there. I think that if you deport a lot of violent criminals, and frankly, if you make it harder to hire illegal labor, which undercuts the wages of American workers, I think you go a lot of the way to solving the illegal immigration problem. But look, President Trump is absolutely right. You cannot have a border unless you're willing to deport some people. I think it's interesting that people focus on, well, how do you deport 18 million people? Let's start with 1 million. That's where Kamala Harris has failed, and then we can go from there.
Facts. J.D. Vance is a beast, bro. He really is. Okay? Because, the mainstream liberal media, they will never ask a Democrat, well, how are you going to do something after Democrats propose some cockamamie plan, right? They never ask for details on how you're going to do it. But Republicans, they have to go into details in regards to how we're going to do it. Right. But J.D. Vance is correct in the sense that first and foremost, we have to stop the bleeding. Right. We have to basically completely stop illegal immigration. That's what actually needs to happen. OK. And I would actually add more to what J.D. Vance said is that we need to put the military on the border. OK. We need to seal the southern border shut because we have taken in 10, 15, maybe even 20 million plus illegal immigrants over the past 3 to 4 years under the Biden/Kamala Harris administration, with Kamala Harris being the border czar. So, yeah, we got to seal the border first. Okay. And after we seal the border, then we can focus on deporting the illegals that are here. Now, these people are trying to pretend like we haven't done this before. We have had mass deportation operations. We had one under Eisenhower. Yes, I know it was controversial. However, in extreme circumstances like the circumstances that we're experiencing right now, extreme measures need to be taken. Okay. And it doesn't have to all be done at one time. These people are trying to pretend that the government is going to go knocking on doors trying to find illegal immigrants to deport. That's not how it'll be done. But you got to prioritize deportation based off who is the most dangerous individuals that are currently in the country. And the most dangerous individuals are the violent criminals, right? The violent criminals should be subject to automatic deportation. And I will go even further than that and to say that any criminals, right? If you're here illegally and you commit a crime and we find out that you're here illegally because you committed a crime, doesn't matter the severity of the crime or whether or not the crime was violent. No, automatic deportation. Okay, automatic. Now, again, this is what is supposed to happen already, but it doesn't, especially in some of these liberal cities that are sanctuary cities, because sanctuary cities literally exist to protect criminals, right? That is the actual definition of a sanctuary city. It is a city that an illegal immigrant could commit a crime in, and the city, the authorities, the local authorities are not going to cooperate with ICE and the federal government in regards to arranging deportation, right? That is the whole point of a sanctuary city. So again, what Jon Karl really should be asking if he was a real journalist, which is why is it that we're okay with these sanctuary cities not cooperating with the federal government, right? If the federal government wants to enforce the law, which is what deportation is enforcing the law, why is it that these liberal cities are allowed to get away without allowing the government to enforce the law, right? Our border laws, right? That is the real question that should be asked. Why are Democrats supporting these policies? But yes, JD Vance is correct in the sense that, yeah, you're not going to get it all done at one time, but you have to prioritize certain groups of illegal immigrants like criminals and deport them automatically. Also, it shouldn't be too hard to round up illegals because we have a bunch of illegals in shelters across these liberal cities, right? So you want to talk about where they at, right? We know where they're at, okay? They're in these shelters, okay? And these people that are in these shelters should be deported, okay? They should have to wait in their home countries or another country, just not the United States of America, when it comes to seeking asylum, right? That's what should happen. Also, on top of that, JD Vance talked about work verification, right? When you talk about E-Verify programs that are supposed to be in place that require employers to verify the citizenship status or the immigration status of an individual applying for a job, yeah, that should be severe penalties for companies that choose to hire illegal immigrants, right? You need to stiffen the penalties. You also need to make it an automatic deportation after the company reports the illegal immigrant trying to get a job, okay? They need to hand over that information to the government so that the government can seek to deport those individuals. Again, you need to make it as hard as possible for illegals to live in the country. There's multiple ways that you can really do this. Some illegals will deport themselves. If life is so hard here as an illegal immigrant that they feel like it's not even worth being here, yeah, they will deport themselves, okay? That's what has to happen. But if you're making it easy for illegals to come here and to live, then yeah, you're going to encourage more illegals to come here, right? And they're going to continue to come. So you can accomplish some of this not just by having the government physically deport illegal immigrants, but just making it difficult for them to be here so that they don't want to come here in the first place. And the ones that are here decide that, you know what, maybe I'm better off going somewhere else, right? Like Europe, right? Or, you know, just not here, okay? And that is the point, okay? That is the point. But this guy, Jon Karl, is trying to defend Kamala Harris because he's trying to falsely claim that, oh, well, she wasn't the border czar. The reason why they're doing that, even though they all agreed that she was the border czar at the time in which she was appointed as border czar, they're doing this to try to prevent Kamala Harris from being attached to the policies of the Biden administration, okay? And this is why when Kamala Harris actually sits down in interviews with the mainstream liberal media, I'm not sure how much we're actually going to get out of the interview, considering how the media is seeming to not be operating in facts and reality when it comes to Kamala Harris's role in the border crisis.
And finally, before you go, we commit to this race to kind of sticking to the facts. I mean, I heard Donald Trump give this speech in Montana he just gave, and he said that Tim Walz has signed a letter letting the state kidnap children to change their gender, that allowing pedophiles to claim, you know, I mean, to be exempt from crimes. I mean, this is not true. It's not remotely true.
Well, what President Trump said, and I haven't watched the whole rally.
What he said was not true.
What President Trump said, John, is that Tim Walz has supported taking children from their parents if the parents don't consent to gender reassignment. That is crazy. And by the way, Tim Walz gets on his high horse about mind your own damn business. One way of minding your own damn business, John, is to not try to take my children away from me if I have different moral views than you.
Allowing the state to kidnap children to change their sexual identity.
What I just explained to you, I would describe as kidnapping, John. He has absolutely done this stuff. It's not crazy, John. Come on.
It's not what
you should not be able to take people's children away from them.
And that's not what he's proposed.
If you disagree with decisions about gender reassignment, yes, he has proposed that, John. He absolutely has. Now, here's the more important thing, John.
So here's the thing. Once again, we have another trick from the mainstream liberal media that allows them to essentially try to say that Republicans are lying about something that they're actually not lying about in order to defend the disastrous and Looney Tunes policies of Democrats, right? Because the bill, the executive order that Tim Walz did sign, basically made Minnesota a trans refugee state, in the sense that if a transgender teenager wants to come to Minnesota for a sex change operation and their parents say, no, you can't do that, but they go to Minnesota anyways, then Minnesota is not going to extradite the child back to the parents, even if the parents are like, no, we don't want you to do that. Also, on top of that, the bill makes gender transition surgeries a minor factor in child custody cases. So the courts are essentially empowered to try to protect children who want gender affirming care. So if you are a dad and you're like, listen, I don't want my son to undergo a sex change operation, and you're facing some type of divorce situation with the mother, then the court may end up siding with the mother because of the mother supporting the child undergoing a sex change operation, right? Which again is extremely messed up. And these are actual real stories that I've talked about on my channel where you have fathers being essentially screwed by the court system because they don't agree with their child undergoing gender transition. Okay, so regardless of the semantics games that the mainstream liberal media wants to play, when you talk about a state like Minnesota refusing to comply with another state's extradition request or child removal request, that to me sounds like kidnapping. Okay, that's what it sounds like to me. Sounds like you're kidnapping a child for the purpose of allowing them to undergo gender reassignment. That to me is extremely messed up. But again, notice how Jon Karl doesn't actually go into the details of what the actual policy is, right? He said, well, that's a lie. That's not true. Okay, well, explain to us exactly what the policy says then, John, right? I would have loved JD Vance to actually ask that question. Explain the policy, John, right? Since you're saying it's not kidnapping, explain what it is. Because what they're saying on the media is that, oh, well, Tim Walz signed a bill protecting gender affirming care, right? This is how they frame it. But again, what does that mean, right? Go into details in regards to what the actual policies are. Now, if you would have went into detail, it would be hard to not see that as a form of kidnapping when a state decides that, no, we are going to keep your child for the purposes of allowing them to get a sex change operation or to transition their gender. That's something that a lot of people are not going to agree with, right? So the media, they don't really want to talk about exactly what Tim Walz supports because they know that it's unpopular.
Why are we talking about inflation? Why are we talking about the fact that groceries are unaffordable thanks to Kamala Harris's policies, and so is housing? We've talked a little bit about the border. Why are we talking about the fact that the entire world is on fire because Kamala Harris's foreign policy, she's just asleep at the wheel? We have a set of plans. You talk about sticking to the facts. Donald Trump and I have a set of plans to lower the cost of housing and food, to bring peace back to the world with American leadership. That is all that we want to do. And I think it's telling that the Harris administration is focused so much on these side issues instead of on the real substance of why Americans are unhappy with Kamala Harris's
leadership. To be clear, I just asked you about something that Donald Trump brought up, not something that the Harris campaign brought up. I was asking you about Donald Trump's words.
I'm saying
thank you.
But John, the Harris campaign, what are their policy views? They don't have a policy position on their website. Should she sit down and answer tough questions with you?
Yes,
I think she should.
Absolutely.
Where is she?
Well,
but we respect the American people enough.
We hope she'll be on the show soon.
I hope so too, John, because the person who wants to be our president ought to sit down for some tough interviews. I'm willing to do it, and I wish she would too.
All right, JD Vance, thank you for your time. Really appreciate it.
Hilarious.
Appreciate it, man.
Hilarious. JD got that dog in him. Okay? JD Vance is letting this guy know that no. You're not just going to cut off this interview while I am trying to finish my point, which is that Kamala Harris has not done any of these interviews. Again, this guy has done a rotation, right? He had the propagandists come in rotation, okay, to school them one by one, which is extremely, incredibly based. Something that you would never see Kamala Harris do. She would never do something like that. So again, JD Vance here is letting this propagandist know that no, before you try to cut off this interview, just understand that you guys need to hold Kamala Harris accountable the same way that you're trying to hold me accountable, but we know they won't, right? We know that eventually when they interview Kamala Harris, it's going to be softball after softball after softball. They're not going to really press her on anything, right? Just like they're not really pressing her for an interview, even though they should be, okay? Because they don't want to interview her. They know that she would fall apart if they asked her the same type of questions that they asked JD Vance, if they were critical of her record the same way they are when it comes to JD Vance and President Trump. Kamala Harris would completely and totally melt down, right? That is the difference. So, hey, again, good job on JD Vance for schooling this anchor and setting them straight, because this is something that Republicans have to do quite a bit, because, again, the media and the Democrats are colluding in order to try to help Kamala Harris win the election. It is really unfortunate that Republicans are playing the game with a handicap, but hey, it is what it is. Let me know what you guys think. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. Most importantly, share a Black conservative perspective. Peace.